Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Harold's Hunting Haberdashery, a fine shop where you may find all manner of ships and modules for helping you in your endeavors to hunt and kill your enemies. Before any killing can happen in EVE, there must be catching. Enemies will always try to run away from you. It is the job of the tackle and a hunter to hold them down and call in reinforcement fleets to show up. Alone, you cannot kill your opponent, but if you hold them down, keep them in one place on grid, then your allied fleets will come in and save the day. When you're hunting people in stealth bombers, particularly cloaky hunters, there are three types of targets. There are the players who are very attentive, they're looking at their screen all the time. They will notice as soon as you enter local in milsec, because everyone has local. You only have a very slim chance of catching them, so don't worry about focusing on that. Then you have the semi-AFK players, who won't notice you right away in local, but they will notice if you warp on grid uncloaked. You know, they're alt-tab, they've got two screens going, they're doing something else at the same time. These are the primary targets. And then as a bonus, you have the truly AFK players. They don't notice when you come into local, they don't even notice when you start killing them, and they are the easiest, but also the rarest of the finds. In order to maximize your odds of catching these semi-AFKers, stealth bombers are excellent hunters. Because they are invisible, they utilize something called a Covert Ops cloaking device too. I'll link that in Fleet here in a second. While a Covert Ops cloak is active, you are 100% invisible in space. You do not appear on other people's brackets, you do not appear on their overview list, and you do not appear on DScan. There is no way for anyone else to know that you are there, except that your name is in local. That means you are somewhere in system. In contrast to a prototype cloaking device, a Covert Ops cloaking device 2 allows you to warp while cloaked. However, you are still vulnerable to area of effect damage while cloaked, even though you can't be targeted by direct damage weapons. You can still take damage from bombs and smart bombs. While you are cloaked with a Covert Ops cloak, you can move at 100% of your ship's normal velocity. However, you cannot activate any modules, offensive, defensive, or otherwise. So even if you have a prop mod, you cannot use it while you are cloaked. You have to slow boat around grid. If you are within 2,000 meters of another collidable object in space, you will get decloaked, and it will break. Examples include but are not limited to ships, drones, structures, NPC pirates, asteroids, the little decorative settings in NPC routing sites, cargo containers, mobile depots, MTUs, wrecks, and corpses. If a cloaked ship warps to another cloaked ship, they can approach the exact same point in space. They will not bump, they will not collide. There's no way of confirming that they're next to each other, except knowing that they warped to each other initially. If one cloaked ship is sitting next to another cloaked ship, and one of them decloaks for whatever reason, it'll cause a chain reaction to uncloak all other ships in the area. This can be a problem for Black Ops fleets if they're all sitting cloaked in a location, and if one person for whatever reason deactivates their cloak, or if they warp in uncloaked, then it sets off a chain reaction, everyone gets decloaked around them. Because anything within 2,000 meters of the first ship gets decloaked, and the chain reaction spreads. When you break your cloak, or the cloak gets broken for you, you will have a cloak reactivation delay that prevents you from instantly recloaking your ship. You'll have to wait, and you'll get a little gray dotted circle around your cloaking device module icon on your screen as a visual cue. It's about 30 seconds or so. It depends on ship. This can be either because you warped something uncloaked, you press the button to decloak yourself, or something bumps into you in space within 2,000 meters and decloaks you. Whenever you jump through a Stargate, even if you're cloaked, you will automatically break cloak for a couple seconds in order to jump through the Stargate. After you jump through a Stargate, you can reactivate your cloak very quickly after you move your ship. So to break your Stargate invulnerability cloak, you click Align or double click in space somewhere, and then immediately activate your cloaking device. If you do this quickly enough, you will be untargetable even though enemies will see you appear on grid for a couple seconds as your cloak cycles. Does everybody who would like to practice on grid with a stealth bomber have a stealth bomber and a Covert Ops cloaking device too at the moment?
I'll be in GE momentarily and I'll just buy one off the market.
Okay, I'm going to intermix practical exercises with the demo with the lecture, so you guys can see how each part of the fit works. So if you have a Nemesis as one of the stealth bombers, Nemesis, Manticore, Purifier, or Hound for each of the 4 different races, all you need for now is a Covert Ops cloaking device fit to it. Go ahead and undock when you're ready. We'll do some drills here to see how cloaking devices work. Please add Wrath or Winterson to your watch list. Right-click on my name in Fleet Chat, add to watch list, so you can easily warp to me. And take the fleet warp. We're going to go to a nearby safe spot. Go ahead and drag your cloaking device over to the right side of your HUD somewhere. That's where I like to put it, so you don't accidentally hit it when you're mashing F1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keys in combat. But also leave it on your top bar. I like putting it in the F8 position. If you didn't know, you can left click and drag your module icons on the HUD at the bottom of the screen over to different positions that are more comfortable for you. So now when we land together in a fleet, we're a little too close to each other. So just double click in space and move away from each other a little bit. We want to be more than 2 kilometers from each other in order to activate cloaking devices. Once you are spread out a little bit, go ahead and activate your cloak. And zoom in for some cool effects. Very good. Everyone is now cloaked and we are invisible. We're all still here on grid, but not even each other. We can't even see each other. So now let's deactivate your cloaking device and see what the cooldown looks like. You'll see the countdown of the gray bar circling around your icon. If you try to click the cloaking device again before it's completed, you'll get an error message. You cannot reactivate, it's still recovering from a previous operation. It's only a few seconds, so everybody re-cloak yourselves. Now to illustrate the warping together while cloaked, I'm going to perform a fleet warp. As long as everyone remains cloaked, no one will know we have moved, and your ship will move by itself. Now we're all going to land within a few thousand meters of each other, but because we're cloaked, we're not going to bounce off, we are not going to decloak each other. Now, as an example of what happens when somebody decloaks in a cloaked group, I'm going to wait a few seconds, then I'll break my cloak, and you guys can see the chain reaction happen. Oh hey, it's a wormhole. Makes things more exciting. Okay, there I go, decloaked. Did everyone get the squad warp, by the way?
Yes.
That's the lucky spread then, nobody decloaked. Okay, everybody just approach my ship. Right-click approach Rather Winterson, and your ship will break its own cloak when you get within 2,000 meters of me. There we go, now we're getting some decloaks. Take this squad warp, and we'll go back to the Keep Star for now. And that's how Covert cloaking devices work. Any questions? Alright, everybody dock up in the Keep Star. And let's talk a little bit about the ships you're flying, stealth bombers. Stealth bombers are Tech 2 frigates that can fit Covert Ops cloaks. They are sort of the beginner, stealthy Covert Ops ship. They have the lowest IS cost, lowest skill point requirement, lowest player skill requirement to use of the Covert Ops ships. They have 0 targeting delay after deactivating their cloaking device. Every other ship in the game has a targeting delay after breaking cloak. So as a hunter, if you can target your opponent as soon as you deactivate your cloaking device, that's a big advantage, because they're going to start trying to run away as soon as they see you decloak on grid next to them. They have frigate hit points, which is to say not very many. They've got frigate locking speed, which is very good for targeting quickly. They have frigate agility, they can warp around pretty quickly. They have frigate speed, which can be good if you fit a 5mm micro warp drive. They can go pretty fast. And oh yeah, they have battleship class weapon systems, torpedo launchers, which are amazing. But they do have drawbacks. So let's talk about torpedoes. Torpedoes are a very battleship class missile. Light missiles are frigate and destroyer class. Heavy missiles are cruiser and battlecruiser class. And then torpedoes are battleship class. What that means is they apply very high damage to very big, very slow targets like battleships, but they apply poor damage to smaller, faster ships. This is because missiles damage application depends on 2 things: target velocity and target signature radius, which is different from turrets, which rely on tracking. So the relative angle and radial velocity of your target is irrelevant for missiles. As long as you're within range, it's how fast your opponent is moving and how big their signature radius is that affects your missile damage to them. Torpedo launchers have a slow rate of fire, but a very large alpha volley damage. So, how do we go about improving our torpedo damage? Because not every target is a battleship. A lot of riders are flying cruisers. So we're going to build our stealth bomber fit around that to increase our damage to smaller ships, faster ships. We do these with 2 modules. The Stasis Web of Fire is the first one. A Stasis Web of Fire is a mid-slot module with a range of 10 kilometers. And when activated on a target, it will reduce its velocity by 50%. So a ship that's normally going 1,000 meters a second, once you get him webbed, will slow down to 500 meters a second. This is very good for missiles because torpedoes in particular have a they have a slow explosion velocity, which means if the target's moving too quickly, it'll only take a small percentage of the torpedo's damage. Our other offensive weapon here is a target painter. A target painter is also an E-War mid-slot, and what it does is it increases your opponent's signature radius. Let me link those two modules here in Fleet. Target painters have very good range. Optimal 30 kilometers fall off to within 70. So they're not as range dependent as webifiers. Stasis webs have to be close, 10 kilometers or less. There are also some missile support skills, I'll link those as well, that will significantly improve your torpedo damage to targets. Those two skills, guided missile precision and target navigation prediction, will both increase your torpedo damage to smaller targets. When choosing an ammo type, you should always go with Navy torpedoes of the correct damage type for the bonus total you're flying. Navy ammunition is more expensive, but it's totally worth it for PvP situations. Navy ammo applies better to smaller targets and has better missile range compared to Tech 1 or Tech 2. The best way to increase your stealth bomber damage is by training the Covert Ops skill that gives you 15% racial torpedo damage per level. So there are 4 different stealth bombers and 4 different damage bonus types. The Galente Nemesis is bonused for thermal damage, or they use Inferno torpedoes. The Minmatar Hound is bonused for explosive damage, they use Nova torpedoes. The Amar stealth bomber is the Purifier, bonus to EM damage, they use Mjolnir torpedoes. And the Caldari stealth bomber, the Manticore, is bonus to kinetic damage, they use Scourge torpedoes. Missiles do have travel time, so if you're close to your maximum range for stealth bombers, which can be 30 to 40 kilometers, up to 60 sometimes, there is a delay. It takes time for missiles to travel from your ship to your opponent, so they do not deal instant damage, unlike turrets. Here's the module for a meta torpedo launcher, and an example Navy torpedo. Does anyone not have some torpedoes fit to their stealth bombers?
Maybe buy some.
You can fit up to 3. That's all you need for now. And then buy just a couple torpedoes to go with it. We're going to have a practical demonstration of damage application. I will be flying a small frigate, and you guys will be shooting me. You're going to see how little damage you deal.
Yeah, it looks like I haven't got the skills for torpedo launchers.
Alright, not a problem. You can still follow around and watch the explosions.
Sounds good.
Everybody fleet on dock. We'll just go to a nearby asteroid belt for this one. If you open your in-game fitting window with keyboard shortcut Alt-F and expand out the settings on the right, actually let's go back to the keep start grid, the rats will kill us eventually. I'll go back to the safe, that's better. But yeah, on the right hand side, it'll show you under offense, your DPS. So it's probably a couple hundred damage per second, which looks really good. But that's torpedo damage. If you're hitting a smaller target, it's going to be significantly less.
Yeah, I've only got like 246 myself.
So if you hover over your torpedo launchers in space, you'll get some information about it from a pop-up window. It'll show you what the alpha damage is, probably in the several thousands. Kaminar, if you would lock up Rathar Winterson, I'm playing a Griffin. And everyone else target me as well, just to see the damage numbers. I didn't say fire. Who's shooting me already? Gary, stop that. Okay, Kaminar, what is your paper volley damage when you hover over your missile launchers?
It's showing 921 thermal.
How much?
921?
921 damage?
Yep.
Please shoot one volley into the Griffin.
I only have one, so it's up.
That did 34 damage. That's because I have a super tiny signature radius. Frigates are the smallest. And I'm also moving at a very high, for torpedoes, a high velocity. I'm orbiting at 340 meters per second. So it's super tiny fraction. That was 34 out of 900 damage to a moving frigate. This is why it's important that you have webifiers and target painters so that you can get more percentage, more realized potential out of your torpedo damage. Gary, do you have 3 launchers on that one, Hound? What is your alpha damage with all 3? Okay, I am now going to stop my ship and reduce my velocity to 0, but I'm still a tiny signature radius. Gary, if you would, one volley. So that did 175 damage out of 3,500. Still basically nothing. As you can see, battleship class missiles apply very poorly to frigates. Does anybody have a target painter on their ship?
I got you.
Lazarus, please put one target painter on Rathor and the Griffin. Okay, Kaminar, one more single torpedo from you, please.
I only had one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, no, I used my last missile torpedo. I only
Oh,
bought one.
okay.
I got you. My alpha is 1,173.
Okay, one shot, please.
123.
So that is up to over 10% damage from just one target painter versus the less than 10% from before. Signature radius is important to understand when you're using stealth bombers because torpedoes rely heavily upon it for dealing damage. Does anyone have a stasis webifier on their ship?
Yes.
Okay, deactivate it for a second.
Deactivated.
If you guys have a friendly overview, you can see my current velocity will be quickly approaching 340. Cyrus, 1 volley, please.
With the web on?
Without. Baseline first.
43.
43 damage. Okay, now please activate the 1 web.
Web is active.
Now you have to give it a few seconds. My velocity will decrease. Okay, it's stabilizing about 200. 1 more volley.
82 damage.
82. So you can see that's a big increase as well. More than double. Webs and target painters will get you kills and stealth bombers. Alright, stop aggressing me please. Unlock me. Also, something else I'd like to illustrate is if you are being targeted in a stealth bomber, you cannot cloak. If you try to activate your cloaking device, you will find you cannot, because I have an active target against you. I'm not shooting you, I'm just targeting you, but that means you cannot cloak. You would have to either warp off grid, or break my target lock, or move far enough away that I can no longer target you. You guys stay where you are. I'm just going to micro-warp drive away from you. Spread yourselves out a little bit, so you're at least 2 kilometers from each other. This is kind of simulating if you're trying to escape from the situation, you would be prompt modding in the other direction. So if you have a micro-warp drive, turn it on and fly away from me. And cloak up as soon as you can, once I start breaking lock here in a couple seconds. Once I'm too far away to target you.
I'm cloaked.
Cloak.
Alright, that's everybody except Wesley. Cloak up, there you go. Take squad warp and go back to the Keep Star. So we've got our cloaking devices, we've got our stealth bombers, we've got our torpedo launchers, we've got our stasis webifiers, and our target painters, all integral components of a good hunting stealth bomber. Next, we're going to talk about the actual tackle modules. How do you keep someone in place? So far, we've only dealt with you being sneaky and applying damage. Go ahead and dock on the Keep Star. So there are 2 tackle modules that you can fit on a stealth bomber subcat. The first is the Warp Disruptor, commonly referred to as a long point, has a single point of tackle strength, optimal range of 20 kilometers for Tech 1. I'll link that in fleet here. And then is a mid-slot aggressive E-War module. Pointing somebody will prevent them from warping away, but nothing else. The much better module, the Warp Scrambler, however, is a different story. The Warp Scrambler is closer range, 7.5 kilometers Tech 1, but it has 2 points of tackle strength, and critically, it will deactivate your opponent's micro warp drive, or not deactivate, but prevent them from using their micro warp drive or their micro jump drive. These are the primary methods of escape for your target ships, so preventing them from doing that is very important. As I'm sure you all know, micro warp drives make your ship go a hell of a lot faster, and the first thing your opponents will try to do is run away from you. So they'll overheat their prop mods and they'll burn in a different direction than you are in. And if they get too far away, you'll lose target lock, you'll lose tackle modules, and they warp away. So having a scram means they cannot use their micro warp drives. They'll click the button and nothing will happen. Same for their micro jump drives, or MJDs. These are modules that can be fitted to command destroyers, or battlecruisers or battleships. And when they successfully spool up over a couple seconds, they will boosh their own ship 100 kilometers in the direction they were previously facing. This is very useful for escaping from sticky situations, but if you're scramming them, they cannot use these modules, and they are stuck there. A warp disruptor is nice to have, but a warp scrambler always takes priority. There are a couple ways to lose tackle. If you die, the effect is gone. You lose tackle. If you lose target lock, if the enemy jams you with ECM drones, then you lose your tackle. If you or the enemy move away from each other, beyond the range of your modules, then you will lose tackle. So even though if you're scramming somebody initially, if they burn away from you and you hold still, they will eventually get further away than the 7.5 kilometer range your module has, and the effect will deactivate. Even though you have them targeted, they have to be close enough for the module to have an effect. There are counterplays to being tackled, and they are called warp core stabilizers. These are low slot modules that enemy riders will sometimes put on their ships. They increase the warp core strength of their ship. So how the math works is if a target ship has an equal or greater number of warp core stabs relative to the incoming tackle strength, they can warp away. Some examples are if a ship has no warp core stabs, it has a warp core strength of 0, a single warp disruptor with 1 point of tackle strength will hold them on grid. They cannot warp away, as long as the warp disruptor is active. However, if a ship has 1 warp core stabilizer and is only being pointed by 1 warp disruptor, they can warp away. Their warp core strength is equal to the incoming tackle strength. You need more tackle strength than a ship's warp core stabilizers in order to hold it down on grid. That's total incoming tackle strength. So if a ship has, say, 5 warp core stabilizers, their maximum escapist fit, and they're being tackled by 3 different ships. And the first ship has a warp scrambler. That's 2 points, 2 out of 5. The second ship also has a warp scrambler. That makes it 4 points, 4 versus 5. The third ship only has a warp disruptor. That's 1 more point, so 5 versus 5. When strength is equal to warp core stabs, the stabbed ship wins. They can warp away. Now, if that third ship also had a warp scrambler, that would be 6 points of tackle strength versus the 5 points of stab. And he would be stuck there. Any questions on that? Alright, everybody on dock. We'll have some little practice tackling each other. Oh, make sure you have a warp scrambler or a warp disruptor fit to your ship first if you do not. I'll give you a minute to do that if you need it. Undock once you have a scram or a long point disruptor fit, or both. As Shattered Armor once said, if you don't have a scram, you're not really tackle. So anytime you take out a stealth bomber for anything, always have at least one scram fit to it. And that is a critical hunter tackle module. Anybody need more time to fit up some tackle?
I'll be out in a moment. I'll just warp to you guys.
Alrighty. Take the squad work. We will be using the sun as our warp point. That's often kind of an escape route for a lot of fleets. The FC will just say align sun, try to get out. I went ahead and broadcast it as an align to in your fleet history window, if you look at that. Also, if you have it on your overview, if you have a travel tab, something that has the sun on it. Don't need to align just yet, just hold where you are. Just have your camera focused toward that direction. Alright, Gary. You're the first volunteer. I'm going to target you. I'm going to point you. You are now pointed. If you look in space, if you zoom in, you can see this kind of green beam from my ship to Gary's. Gary, please try to escape from the point. You can do this by moving away. And you'll see Gary's turned on his micro warp drive. He's now moving at a very high velocity. He's quickly increasing the distance between us. Once it's over 20 kilometers, I will lose point. Gotta keep going, Gary. You're still pointed. And there he goes. I've lost tackle because he's more than 20 kilometers away. And he can now warp out if he wants to. Kaminar, do you have a micro warp drive fit to your ship?
Yes.
I am now scramming you. Try to activate your micro warp drive.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, I had it for a second. You're moving away, let me get close to you.
Yeah, it still didn't let me activate it.
That's because I'm scramming you. As much as you want to, you cannot activate your micro warp drive as long as I have the scram active. But you can still fly away from me. So just double click your ship in an opposite direction from my ship, and you'll eventually pull range if I hold still. There you go, I've lost scram because you're 9 kilometers from me. My scram only goes out to 7.5. Who has a point on their ship? Long point warp disruptor. Who has a scram fitted to their ship?
I do. I'll be to you in a second.
Cool. Yep, warp to Rather Winterson.
Thank you for the reminder, because I was definitely warping to the other guy.
Wesley has a scram, very good. Wesley, if you would please come and tackle me. Approach my ship, target me, and activate the scram once you're within range of the module. Very good. I am now scrammed. And for those watching later, I'm trying to click my micro warp drive, but I'm just getting an error message that says external factors are preventing your micro warp drive from responding to this command. That's because I'm being warp scrambled. Cannot use the 5-min micro warp drive. Okay, Wesley, please stop your ship. Just control space. Or just deactivate, that's fine. Anyone have questions on warp disruptors or warp scramblers? Okay, let's have everybody target Rather Winterson and put all of your EWAR modules on me. If you've got target painters, if you've got webs. Oh, Wesley, you're breaking up something awful there. I can't even hear what you're saying. But yeah, lock up Rather, put all your EWAR on me. Tackle, webs, points, grams, target painters. Now my ship is moving, even though it's rather slow. Make sure your ship is moving as well, relative to mine. Orbit is usually your best bet. Close orbit, like right-click orbit 500 meters. As long as your ship is faster than the ship you're orbiting, you'll be good. That'll keep you as close as possible, but also still moving around. Because if your target has turrets, then you want to have radial velocity to reduce damage. And you always want to be moving, you never want to hold still in any situation. And I am well and thoroughly tackled. Let's count up the points of tackle strength we have here. I've got 3 scrams on me, so that's 3 times 2 each is 6 points of tackle. And I've got 3 disruptors, so that's another 3 points. So that's 9 points of incoming tackle strength. I would need a ship with 10 warp core stabs in order to warp out right now. I'm not sure if that exists.
Super carriers.
Oh, that's right. Capitals. Super caps.
Yep. Like 5 warp scram strength per level of the carrier scope. Caldari for Caldari, Mimitar, so on and so forth.
Okay, everybody please stop targeting me. Deactivate all modules. And let's practice a starburst maneuver, which just means micro warp drive in a random direction and cloak up as soon as possible. But stay on grid. Some of you are still uncloaked. Activate your cloaking device as soon as you're able.
I double clicked mine.
Aha, that's worth pointing out. It is possible to double click your cloaking device. If you click it once, and if you're really impatient, and you click it again really soon after, sometimes the game is too slow to immediately activate it. And by the time you click it the second time, it's a fraction of a second before already activated. So you'll then deactivate it, and you have to wait the timer till you can reactivate it again. So try to avoid spamming your cloak button. Sometimes you have to wait a second for the game to catch up. Alright, so you've got your stealth ships, you've got your oversized guns, and your tackle modules. Now how do we find targets? We use something called D-scan. D-scan is short for directional scanner. Every ship in the game has a directional scanner, even pods. It's built into your in-game interface. At the center bottom of your screen where your hit points and HUD is, look to the left, you'll see 7 little circles. On the left-hand column, third row, it says scanners if you hover over it. If you hold left click, it'll bring up a little radio menu with 4 directions. Hover your mouse to the right to bring up the directional scanner. Alt D, keyboard shortcut, D as in dog. If you've never used the directional scanner before, it allows you to detect anything within 14.3 AU. Excuse me. It can be set with multiple with presets. You can filter it according to overview presets. So if you don't have a preset, it'll show everything, which can be overwhelming. Most people have a ships and bubbles overview. That's what I use personally as a hunter. Because you care about other people, and you care about things that will pull you out of warp, like warp disruption bubbles. Most other things are specialized cases.
Can you share that tab preset?
I can tell you
know
how to
you
make
can
one later.
Thank you.
I don't know how to do individual presets. Yeah, we'll go over that at the end. So you can change the settings at the bottom of your DScan window. You'll see there's two sliding bars, one for range, one for angle. You can quickly customize the range by clicking on the little tick marks. It goes from 14.3 to 10 to 5 and to 1 for quick reference, quick changes. When you're initially trying to find someone in system, you always have it at max distance, 14.3, to see if there's anything within DScan range of you. If there is, and leave it at max angle as well, 360 degrees, that scans in a sphere around your ship through space. So how you find people is you begin by narrowing down the distance. You reduce it by chunks, first to 10, then 5, then 1. And when your target disappears from your list, that means they are not at the shorter distance, and they're somewhere between that and the previous larger distance. You can then fine-tune your scan by scrolling the mouse wheel with your mouse hovered over the box with the numbers. That'll adjust by 0.1 AU each time. So if you scan somebody at, say, 10 AU, and then when you hit 5 AU scan, they disappear, it means they're somewhere between 5 and 10 AU. You would then use your mouse wheel, hover over the mouse to scroll up to like 6 AU and scan again. If you get nothing, then you scroll up to 7 AU and scan again. Then you scroll up to 8 AU. And if you get a hit, you know they're between 7 and 8 AU away. That's how you narrow down the distance. Being as accurate as possible is ideal. That gives you a more specific destination for where they could be, but it also takes more time. There is a delay for the refresh of the directional scanner. You can only do it every so many seconds. If you spam the button, it only refreshes every couple seconds. So let's get a little bit of practice in for that. I'm going to warp us to a planet somewhere. Take the squad warp. So I'm going to warp to a nearby celestial. I'm going to decloak. You guys are going to try to find me based with your directional scanner. Oh, but first we'll go over how to narrow down once you have the distance. So once you have a rough idea of their distance, within hopefully a couple point AUs, you know they're between 6 AU and 5.5 AU, for example. You wouldn't necessarily want to spend all the time narrowing it down exactly. Once you've got it within 1 or 2 AU, usually good enough. Although try to be less than 1 AU if you can. You would then open up your probe scanner window, which is Alt plus P as in peanuts, keyboard shortcut. This will list all of the anomalies, and as well as signatures in space. Most radders are in combat anomalies. You'll see we've got quite a few here in GE. No ships out within range, that's fine. I'm going to warp to one of these anomalies. You guys will try to find me with DScan. So once you have a rough idea of the distance with your directional scanner, you would then reduce the angle to 5 degrees, and then hold V as in Victor, then left-click each of the anomalies in turn from your probe window. This will cause a new directional scan in the direction of that site at a narrow 5-degree angle around the camera. Your
By
camera,
holding what?
V, keyboard like Victor. V is the shortcut to refresh your D-scan. It's also the button you hold and then you left-click the sites in your probe scanner window to D-scan those sites at 5 degrees. When you set the D-scan to 5-degree angle, that means it's only scanning a very narrow cone around where your camera is focused. But you can do the Victor plus left-click to scan sites quickly without changing your camera angle. So even though your camera isn't moving, your D-scan is moving around to those sites. Okay, my ship is decloaked. You guys are looking for a nemesis. Named Nemesis. So start trying to D-scan me down, starting at 360 degrees angle and maximum range, and dropping distance until I disappear.
He's between 5 and 6 AU.
Very good, Cyrus. Can you get me to within a couple point AUs?
I got him at 5.8.
So now everybody, you would look over at your probe scanner window and find the combat anomaly that is roughly 5.8 AU away. I didn't say warp, Gary. That's a live combat site. I would warp out and cloak up.
Hey, okay.
I got you at HJK.
So there are a couple. You're going to have to change to your 5-degree angle. And then hold V and left click to double check if I'm actually at that site or not.
You're appearing on 2. You appear on HJK and DJM.
That's a good point. Gary actually got it the first time. I won't spoil which side it is.
I got it. I just thought I saw the mistake I made. I was
But-
aiming at 5.04 instead of 5.8.
But what can also happen sometimes is if you're at a bad angle relative to the anomalies in the system, they may appear bunched relative to your position, so a 5-degree scan would not rule out multiple sites. In these situations, you would warp to the sun or a nearby celestial body cloaked and try to reposition to get a clearer spread around nearby anomaly sites. So go ahead and do that now if you want. Warp to the sun at range while cloaked. That'll put you in the rough center of the system. That's a good place to D-scan from because most of the sites are arranged kind of spherically around the sun. You should have nice clean D-scan angles from there. Let me know once you think you found me. By D-scan alone, don't warp into the site yet. Anybody having any trouble? Any questions about how to do the D-scan narrow down?
Pretty sure I've got you.
Okay, go ahead and warp to the site at 100 then. While cloaked. Let me know if you see me on grid.
Eyes on.
Good job, Wesley.
In warp. Wrong side.
Yeah, on grid.
Good job. And for those who are viewing the recording at home, I was just checking D-scan to try and find where all the ships were. I narrowed it down by distance, and then I looked at what was at that distance away from me, and I focused my camera and did a 5-degree scan, and I found them. So not every enemy will be sitting in a combat anomaly. They might be at asteroid belts, or citadels, or in posses on moons. So there are 2 ways to find those people. The first is to have a tab with all the celestial bodies on it, like a warp out overview tab. You can quickly change back and forth between your overview tab and your D-scanner. Oh, by the way, the directional scanner window should be pulled out and docked beside your overview. So on the right, you've got a big box, which is your overview list. You can click and drag the directional scanner top of it, where it says directional scanner, kind of behind and next to the overview. It'll stick in behind itself. You'll know it's okay to let go of the left click when you see the highlight. That way you can
No, I've
easily...
been grid on you the whole time. I'm sorry. Sorry for cutting you off.
That's okay. That way you can easily switch back and forth between your directional scanner and your overview. So yeah, if you have a warp out tab that shows moons, planets, and asteroid belts, once you have your distance, you can then go to your overview tab and then hold C as in Charlie, and hold C and left click on an overview object to focus your camera on it. And then switch to your directional scanner, put it to 5 degrees. And look, there's a capsule over there, that asteroid belt I was looking at. You will see what is there. Now it's not guaranteed to be there exactly. They could be, somewhere between you and that point, depending on the distance you set for your D-scan range. Like if I do a shorter distance, even though it covers the asteroid belt, the capsule's gone. Or maybe he moved. There could be multiple things in line with your D-scan. Another easier and slightly better way to do it is to have your probe scanner docked in your solar system map, so they are both open at the same time. You can resize it to whatever's comfortable for you. I have it squished to about 1/4 of the screen top left. That way I can still see what my camera is focused on in my main view. You can click and drag and zoom in and out with your mouse wheel on the solar system map. It'll show you bookmarks, it'll show you the sites. You can see the planets, you can see asteroid belts. It even shows you your D-scan range. So when you set your D-scan to maximum, 14.3 AU 360 degrees, you'll see this big green sphere on your solar system map. As you adjust the angle of your scanner, you'll see the reduction as a cone, an increasingly small cone. It updates in real time as you drag your camera around on your main screen, on your solar system map.
I'm a little lost. Where'd you open up the map at?
So when you open the probe scanner, if you have it by itself, there's a little button at the top, not the very top, that says
Roger, I got it. That's cool, sorry.
and if they're separate, you can stick them together. At the very top of the probe scanner window when they're both open, there'll be a white box that says Dock and Solar System Map. This updates in real time, so when you hold V and left click on something, or hold C and left click on something, the camera angle will rotate around and you can see what you're scanning on your map as well as your main camera. That'll give you a bird's eye view of what it is relative to everything else and the distances involved. Using your in-game map can be very useful to find enemy citadels, because the icons will appear sometimes, as long as they're not grouped up with other celestials. If they're by themselves. Now, we always see blue structures in the overview list on the right, depending on what your filters are. But hostile citadels will not appear in your overview list on the right-hand side. The bracket will still appear in space. You'll see a little blue icon, little blue brackets, usually nestled with some other celestial objects. So you have to pan the camera around manually to find the citadels and systems that are hostile. Now you won't always be able to find your target on D-scan. They're not always going to be at a celestial object. They could be at a safe spot. They could be at a cosmic signature, like a wormhole. They could be at a recently expired ratting site that is no longer appearing on your overview list probe scanner window. You would need combat scanner probes to find those guys. That's another class. Maybe the advanced one. There are ways to find them though. The D-scan gives you a great idea of what's there and what is not. There are a couple ships that are invisible to D-scan. They are very spooky. They're the recon cruisers, the non-cloaky recons, like the Hugin, the Lachesis, the Rook, and the Curse. Cannot be detected by D-scan. You won't know they're there until they show up on grid. Alright, so you found an enemy in a site with D-scan. What next? You have to warp to him. But what range? Do I go at 0? Do I go at 50? Do I go at 100? The safe bet is always 100, and I'll tell you why. It involves dropping tactical bookmarks. And I'll cover those first. You can press Ctrl plus Bravo on your keyboard, Ctrl B as in boy, to open up a box that'll allow you to drop a bookmark of your current location. You can type in the name under label, you can select a folder or a subfolder, and you can set the expiration date. This will save your current ship's location in space as a bookmark you can warp to later, and that you will see on grid. There's a little box with a pin in it. It's a good idea to set most of your tacticals to a 2-day or sometimes 3-hour expiry, because it is possible to fill up bookmark folders, and then you can't make any more until you delete all the old ones. So go ahead and just practice making a temporary bookmark for yourself. Doesn't matter what folder it's in. Set it for 3-day expiry, type some random letters in there. There are 2 ways to place the bookmark: by pressing Submit at the bottom of the window, or hitting Enter on your keyboard. Dreads? Okay, let me check the Cyrus. 1 second.
It's nothing. I've been watching it, and that's why I haven't said anything else yet. I've just been watching what's going on in that channel.
Okay, no big deal.
It just looks like a bunch of guys being dumb and local as usual.
So you should see the little icon in space appear next to your ship, or in your ship if you're not moving. Something cool about bookmarks is you can save your location while you are in warp. This allows you to create off-grid safe locations. Okay, I'm pretty far away from these rats. I'm going to cloak up. Except I can't because the rats are targeting me. That's fine. Fleet, please warp yourself to Rather Winterson at 10 kilometers. You can do this by right-clicking on my name from the watch list. And there's an option under Fleet. Warp to member, pick the range 10 kilometers. Please stay cloaked. So now once you land, please drop a new bookmark. Call it point A. We'll go with point A for now. And then save it. I'm now going to warp the fleet to a different location in GE. Go to a customs office. Before we warp, I want you guys to press Control B again to open up your bookmark window. Type in safe 1 or whatever. We'll go with the numbers for the safe. Don't hit enter yet, just have it open and labeled. Now during the fleet warp, I want you guys to press enter or click submit at some point along the way to our destination. So drop a bookmark in empty space between the two places. Alright, here's the warp. Wait until you're fully in warp and you see the AU start ticking down. And then drop the bookmark once you see the numbers start moving. Once you land, we're all going to decloak because I went at 0. Please right-click in space and find your bookmark. It'll be under Locations and whatever subfolder you put it under. And then warp back to your safe bookmark. Once you're in warp, you can cloak up again. These are what's called inline safes, because they were made between two celestial locations. In this case, it was a combat site and an Astrahus. For covert op ships, this is good enough, but if you didn't have a cloak, you would want to make what's called a deep safe, because it is possible for other ships to warp between the same 2 points as you, and if they do it enough times, making their own bookmarks each time, they might eventually get the same grid that you're sitting on. To make a deep safe, you would warp from a third celestial object to your first safe, and make another safe bookmark during that warp in between the two. That would leave you out of line between any celestial objects. Also, ideally, safe bookmarks, if possible, are far away from stargates, so that you can hopefully avoid being descanned if you decloak for whatever reason, or if you're uncloaked ship. Fleet, go ahead and warp yourselves to Rather Winterson at 0. My safe is over 14.3 AU from all the gates. It's only within range of this one Astronews over here. Brave News Network. So this would be a good safe. It's far away from everything else. It's more than 14.3 AU, which means nobody could descan me even if I was uncloaked. Unless they'd already warped to the Citadel here. It is possible to bookmark more than just your current ship's location. There are certain objects you can right-click save location of and save that object's location when you are on grid with it. Not everything, but some things include asteroids, wrecks, corpses, cargo containers, MTUs, and anchored bubbles. Wrecks are the most common, and this comes into catching your target in a sight. It's safer to always warp in at 100 and to drop a bookmark as you are landing. Ideally, this bookmark, you need to drop it before you exit warp all the way, because you need to be able to warp back to it quickly. It doesn't have to be on grid, but you want it to be within a couple AU. So let's say once you're less than 1 AU, once your distance marker starts ticking down the hundreds of thousands of kilometers, you would drop a bookmark. That'll save you a lot of time coming up. So once you land out of warp in your sight with the target that you found using dscan, and you've just dropped a bookmark as you were landing, you can then take a look at the situation and see what the relative positions of things are. Because warping at 0 sometimes gets you decloaked if there's a lot of rats, or if the enemy ship is even sitting at 0. You don't always want to go in right away. By dropping that bookmark, you can immediately warp back to it, and then from there, warp to the save location of a wreck on grid next to the target ship. This is how I catch people most of the time, because it's only a small chance that they're very close to wherever you warp in at. But by dropping a bookmark close by, within 1 AU, so it's faster to warp out and back again. You look at the grid, you find a wreck that's close to them, and you don't always warp back to your first bookmark. If you see there's a wreck that's kind of close to them, but they're on the other side from where you are, you would still end up further away from them even if you warp back to the wreck from your bookmark, because it's in the same location you first came from. Pan your camera around and try to find the celestial object that's behind the target ship. You want to put your warping path across where the ship is coming from other celestials if possible. So if you save a bookmark of a wreck in the center of the site, and you see that the sun is roughly behind where the enemy ship is, you could warp to the sun, and then warp back to that saved bookmark at a certain range. That'll put you really close to your target ship. Let's try and get some practice doing that. That's a good side I won't immediately die in.
Asteroid belt.
Yeah, asteroid belt, that's a good idea. And here's some more D-scan practice for you guys. I am warping to a random asteroid belt. I'm not going to tell you which one. It is your job to find me somewhere in system. You have a clue it's an asteroid belt using D-scan. I'm once again decloaked. You're looking for a nemesis named Nemesis. Make sure you stay cloaked when moving around system. You can warp to things at 100 while cloaked, and you should be fine most of the time.
Eyes on.
Well done, Wesley. That was pretty fast. I'm going to set up an orbit around the little can I dropped in the center of the site to simulate what a ratting ship might be doing. So I'm moving pretty fast, too fast for you to slow boat into. So try to find an angle and maybe save some asteroids or the can as a bookmark. Try to find a good warp in to get next to me. Does that make sense? Because you're trying to get a close warp into where I'm going to be. So once you're on grid, it's always a good idea to take a look at your opponent's ship, to focus your camera on them to see what they're doing. You can see kind of the direction they're moving and if they're orbiting, and you can try to extrapolate their orbit point. And if you have your tactical overlay on, you can see the blue arrow that shows their direction of velocity. Tactical overlay is super useful. Next to your HUD on the left of the 7 buttons, it's the first column, second row, Control D as in dog. It gives you a little bunch of radius lines for kilometers. It's very helpful for finding how far away things are in 3D space instead of having to guess and click on each one. With examples for the viewers at home, I've got my mining tab open and I can see the little lines coming from the asteroids. Even though they're at a 3D position relative to my ship, the tactical overlay shows their distance with the white dots. But even though I hadn't targeted them, I didn't know exactly what distance they were. I had a rough guess from where the lines come up to meet the middle plane of my overview. Anybody else found me yet?
I'm on grid with you.
Alright, these rats are slowly killing me. So we'll call that enough practice for today.
Yeah, my overview is not set up right. I can't see the rocks in space.
You should always have an overview tab for everything. You can use the default preset for all. We'll go over that at the end, how to make overview setups. So what kind of bookmarks should you make and how often? The answer is yes. Bookmarks are super useful, especially for stealthy ships, because you want to have things to warp to that are not celestial objects. The two most important ones, well there's 3 actually. They're the safe bookmarks, which you drop while you're in warp between 2 celestial objects. But then there's a modified version of those that I call near bookmarks, that are within 14.3 AU of a destination, like within 14 AU of a gate, but still far off grid away from it. So if you want to check what's on grid with that gate, you can warp to your near bookmark safe and descan the gate comfortably from a distance while cloaked. And you can see if there are any ships or bubbles on it without having to warp directly to grid. But if you do need to warp onto a grid, you don't want to use the gate as a warping point directly. Because if there are bubbles on the gate, then you land in the bubble if you use the gate as your warping point. You need tactical bookmarks made beforehand, at least 200 kilometers in a direction that is not in line with any gates. I'm going to warp myself to a tactical bookmark on the Victor 3 gate, so as you guys know when I land, you can warp to me. And we'll have an example.
We have some Tuskers rolling around, FYI.
Roger, we'll stay cloaked.
So while we're waiting, a little bit of humor. One of my guys made it to 1DQ1 TAC A in a venture last night.
The Mad Lad.
We're trying to get him to get on grid to put a recruiting ad up in Delve for Mayhem.
Okay, there are some hostiles in system, so this will be good practice and put some realism and some danger in the fleet. If you are cloaked, you can warp to Magnussen. I'm at a tactical on the Victor Tech 3 gate, over 500 kilometers. So because I am not in line with the gate, even if they put bubbles at 0, you guys could still warp to me. The bubbles will not catch you. You will see some neutrals when you land. Do not panic. You are cloaked. They cannot see you. They cannot warp to you, because there are no wrecks nearby. It's difficult to make tacticals in a stealth bomber, but if you have a micro warp drive, 5mm micro warp drive, and an empty system, then you can just slowly burn your own. Generally, they're made with faster Tech 1 frigates. But you can use other people's bookmarks, using things called shared bookmark folders, which are very useful. I will go ahead and link the Brave Alliance Bookmarks channel. That is a chat channel that contains the links to the shared bookmark folders that Brave uses. I would suggest everybody have the Brave Basic Tacticals folder online and the Brave Temporary folder online. If you've never used the shared bookmark folder before, you click on the light blue cyan link in that chat channel. It'll open up a window. And if you weren't connected to it, you'd have a button that said Online Folder. Click that. You will now be able to see and create tacticals that are shared between other people in that bookmark folder. It'll be an option when you hit Control B on your keyboard. If you have your own folders, you can scroll all the way down and you'll find these shared folders. And you'll see whether they're online or not. You can have a maximum of 3 shared bookmark folders online at one time. Although you can connect to other ones that will just stay offline if you have to juggle more than 2 or 3. Any questions on bookmarks? Alright, we can talk about the final piece of the puzzle for hunting covert op ships. And that is the Covert Sinosaural Field Generator 1. These can be fit to stealth bombers, and they will light covert cynos. Unlike a regular or an industrial sinosaural field that everybody can see across the entire game, on their map, or in system as a warpable object, covert cynos are invisible to everyone unless you're already on grid with it. Covert cynos allow Black Ops battleships to bridge Covert fleets to covert cynos, and also to jump themselves in. These are what hunting fleets use. Once you've found your target with D-scan, once you've warped in on him, juggling bookmarks and saved locations, and warping in and out from celestial objects, and once you decloak and tackle him, once you've got him scrammed, and hopefully webbed as well, then you can light your covert op cyno. which will consume liquid ozone. You need to have some of that in your cargo bay. The Covert cyno lasts 60 seconds on a stealth bomber. It varies on other ships. And you are immobilized for those 60 seconds. Your velocity drops to 0, and you cannot warp out. The cavalry will then arrive in majestic fashion all around you, and they will start killing your target. Because you're holding still, there's a high chance that you will die as a cyno, but as long as you light it and everybody else jumps in the next couple seconds, they'll still get on grid to secure the kill. You have to be in the same fleet as your Black Ops Bridger in order to connect the cyno and the fleet. Because your ship stops cold in space, sometimes it's worth waiting a couple of seconds to slow down your target before you light the cyno. Because even if you get a scram on them, if they're still going 600 meters a second with an afterburner, you need to web them as well and wait until they slow down a bit. And make sure you are close to them, because they're going to keep trying to burn away every second of that cyno. Just a final word on intelligence. Stealthy ships are very good scouts. They're easy to report without being seen. If you have eyes on a location, or if you have D-scan on a fleet, the format to report intelligence is solar system. I'm in GE Tech HAV. I'm on the Victor Tech 3 gate grid. I'm looking at, say, friendly. We'll assume friendlies are enemies. I'm looking at a small gang of interceptors, destroyers, and a cruiser of 5. They're in Brave Alliance, Vindy, and IOU. And they're sitting on an Astrahus, tethered. And 2 scepters are on the gate at 0. And then I would give them a D-scan link. So whenever you perform a D-scan, you can click within the field and hit Control A to highlight everything, all the ships. You can do that now to practice on the friendlies here on grid. You can then go to a third-party website. I use dscan.info as an example. And after you've highlighted everything with Control A, hit Control C to copy the information. Tab over, click in the box, hit Control V to paste, and then submit. That'll generate a nice little breakdown of the fleet. You then copy the URL of that particular scan website the top of the window, and you paste it in fleet chat. Like that, as an example. And that lets FCs, who are regions away, quickly look at what's on D-scan on grid with you. If you are engaged with an enemy, the intel report goes in roughly this order. I'm flying X, I'm tackling Y, I'm being attacked by Z, at XYZ, then you type some W's in fleet chat so people can quickly warp to you, and what solar system you're in. Example would be, I'm flying a stealth bomber, I'm tackling a caracal, he's not aggressing me, he's not targeting me, I'm at the HY gate at 0 in GE Tech HAV. And I would then link the solar system by just dragging and dropping from the top left corner of the screen into chat like that. And I would type some W's. W's are keyword for warp to me. I have something tackled. At 0, more or less. Alright, cool. Everybody warp yourselves back to the Keep Star and dock up. We're going to get formed up, and then we'll head out on a little roam to Aquarius. Try to apply what we've learned here today.